Well, welcome once again. This is the Doctor Digital podcast. And you may have wondered at some time or another, is there any way to capture some things from the past? Now, one of my uncles went actually to the Jack Dempsey Gene Tunney fight, and he was actually an eyewitness. I would have loved to have him recorded and to say, this is something you can preserve for all time. But we've had people that pass by, loved ones and others who are no longer with us, and we'd like to be able to hang on to those memories. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because my special guest today is Jimmy Spikes, and he is the founder and CEO of Beternal, the first memory preservation platform with a distribution system. And I'm fascinated by this concept and this idea. Hope you are too as well. So welcome to the show, Jimmy. Thanks for being my guest today.
Thank you for having me on.
You bet. Could you tell us a little bit about your background? Very fascinating how you got into this field, and tell us a little bit about yourself then.
I'm a ex-Navy veteran or a Navy veteran. And basically, I've always had a hankering for history. And basically, most of my life, I like to learn things from the people that I was close to. Reading books and things like that didn't necessarily equate too much with me, but just having people in my life that would, inform me of how to do things and teach me the ways like that really improved my well-being as far as and keep things going like that. So really hands-on. Beternal came from one day during the pandemic. I
Okay.
live in Puerto Rico and I was alone. So I went to the beach one day kind of thinking about what was going on with my life. Am I on the right path? And so I was looking for some inspiration from the only person I knew that could give me some would be my mom. When I was going through the phone, the only was one picture, no videos or nothing. It was all gone because she had saved it on social media
Mm-hmm.
for a decade of pictures and put some into other forms of storage like Dropbox and things like that, but she forgot to tell anybody the passwords and stuff. So all of it's lost.
Oh,
My
wow.
family history.
Sure. So what would you say? Because I know people have done different ways of keeping memorials. For example, I'm a voice talent, so I'll do memoirs for people. But what would you say are some of the biggest changes that have taken place along with social media and things like that in order to reserve and preserve some of these memories?
Well, realistically, there hasn't been any. I mean, back when we grew up, the big thing I remember as a kid was going over to somebody's house and looking through the photo albums and hopefully having somebody there that could explain to you the pictures that you were looking at.
Mm-hmm.
We got happy with all the information you can store on your phone. But once you're gone or you lose that device, if you don't have access to that device or anything on it, or if you save it in the cloud, you lose access to that. So
Mm-hmm.
actually, we've gone backwards as far as history up until this point.
Yeah, so back in the day, this was way back in the day for me. I actually had to wait for my dad to set up a little 8 millimeter film. And so you had to take it out of the little cassette type thing and then spool it in, and it would be 8 minutes, and then you had to take it out. It was a very laborious process. So big treat for us, but it was a very difficult process. But of course, those things are sort of lost because they're not in something else in some sort of medium that can be retained. So, what would you say are some of the changes that you're aware of, and what do you do that is different than the way that things have been preserved previously?
Well, from just the distribution aspect,
Okay.
you can assign and add all of this to a storage device, but
Okay.
then you need to make sure that somebody has access to those
Mm.
and to your accounts, passwords, and all of this stuff. If you change your password, you forget to give it to them, you walk outside, you're no longer with us, that information's gone. If you don't feel comfortable with giving access to people, something happens to you, that information's gone. So with Paternal, we came up with a distribution system to where you assign recipients. When that day comes and we verify that you're no longer around, we will contact them. Once the verification process is accepted, then we'll distribute the information to all the people you've assigned it to.
Okay, that's what I was really interested in, this distribution model. So, in other words, you preserved it, or the person does, and then after they're gone or they're passing, then you have a way of initiating a follow up with those people that they have designated, something like a will, I guess. Like you can certainly say, this is the person I want to have access to my information. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the distribution is really an interesting way of keeping things going and to memorize and to memorialize whatever that person had wanted to record. And I see what your point is. I know way back when, again, back in the day, nobody had really thought about it, but there were websites, and then somebody started to preserve like the dead websites because as people pass, like, well, then has access to these websites anymore? So somebody started doing a project like that, but it's a fascinating idea. What would you say the growth experience has been? Is there enough of a demand? Are you finding people that really want to find this type of new service?
We've just now started beta testing and put it active. Within a week, I've gotten 60 people signed up.
Oh,
That's no advertising, no promotion, no nothing.
mhm.
So at this point, it seems to be very sustainable. Um, it's like I said, I'm not really trying to push it right now, but I do know that from everybody I've shared it with, we've all lost somebody that we wish we could sit down with
Sure.
and listen to them speak. And, technology is changing every day. And when I start thinking about it, you got virtual reality. It won't be very long. You can take these recordings, put them in a VR,
Yeah.
and you can have a conversation with the people that you're talking to if
Mm.
you allow them to adapt to that. All of that information will be available at some point.
Yeah, you can see there are some systems that are out there that if a person records 2 or 3 or 5 minutes, something like that, and they use a number of words and keywords, that the AI then can reduplicate all of those things based on the sound of the person's voice, and it sounds just like them. I mean, there've been those calls where they say, this is Johnny on the
Oh,
phone.
yeah.
It's not really Johnny, I mean, things like that. So it is possible. The AI is, it's pretty mind blowing what it is possible if we're doing. Have you thought about, and are there any business applications that you've been thinking of, or a possibility or interest that businesses have had in a service such as this?
Sort of, and yes and no. It would be beneficial to different aspects of if you're the CEO of a company and something
Hmm.
happens to you and you do have documentation that you don't necessarily trust anybody with, you could put that information or where to find it on a Beternal, send it to some and assign it to somebody. When that day happens, something happens to you or whatever, we'll distribute it to them after the process has gone along to indicate to them where to go get it, where to find it, and X, Y, Z. I mean, the applications for it are very, 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 very ongoing. But for right now, I just want to focus on saving the memories of people just to help them after somebody's gone.
Hmm. Are you still, where are you in terms of funding? Are you looking for funding? Are you getting funding or something? Or would you consider yourself a startup? Or where are you in terms of business terms?
Right now, we're just basically, I've been bootstrapping the company for right now. About to get into an incubator program with the Founders Institute
Hmm.
to help me learn a little bit more about the business aspect. This is the first time I've been involved with a tech company,
Okay.
so it's a little bit more than the brick and mortar stuff I'm used to. So just kind of going from there. I mean, I could use funding. It depends. To help build the product more than what it is right now, of course. But at the same time, I'm not rushing into it.
Mhm. Have you gotten interest? I know I appreciate your service. Have you gotten interest from vets and other people? Because I'm thinking of some of the vets I know that they've been to Iraq and Afghanistan and some other places that to me sound very exotic and very different experiences. But I would have loved to have gotten something. I'll give you an example. There was one gentleman I knew, really admired him. He was around the Saddam Hussein's sons and he was involved in that action. But have you gotten interest from vets who have said, I'd like to be able to preserve some of the experiences that I had during my service?
So a lot of that because that was a couple of my inspirations. I had an uncle who served 2 tours in Korea and 3 in Vietnam or 4 in Vietnam. His stories were unbelievable. But when he passed, I mean, this is, 15, 20 years ago, all of that information went with him besides what I can kind of remember. But he had a book lifestyle that I wish I would have had more. He was very inspirational in my life. But there again, too, I do know people who haven't come back
Yeah.
and they had little kids. Now, those little kids' stories about their mom and their dad is only told by the people that they knew. It's not by them.
Hmm.
This will allow vets to make memories for people every day of their life, especially when they're deployed, because unfortunately, in that type of work, you don't know. That might be so. Telling somebody you love them that day might be the last thing that they see or hear from you. But
Hmm.
at the same time, it will be a message from them.
Yeah, and it's very personal. It's very direct because it is really them, and it preserves it in a way that is probably a much better format because every time the technology changes, because as you suggested, it changes quickly because I've seen the evolution from, let's say, 45 LPs,
Mhm.
cassettes, 8 tracks. I mean, all of those kinds of things, VCRs. And then all of a sudden, well, the stuff that you had is no good because you can't play the darn thing. So, are you doing something about that? I mean, so are these products in such a format that can be universal and will remain? Like, how are they housed? In what form?
In a cloud. They'll
In,
be in the cloud at the moment.
okay.
And we're going to give people access to downloading files if they choose
Okay.
once they're gone, once you get the distribution. But the realistic aspect of that is it takes so much to download a video file or a bunch of pictures and things like that. It would probably just be better served to have access. That way you can continue to look at them. I don't see technology getting that far away from cloud computing in the recent future, but when it does, it'll be easily adaptable to what we do.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that was always the limitation. Previously, we had some sort of physical component, and that's why I'm saying it would be cassette and 8 track. I mean, some of my buddies in high school, we had the big debate. What do you think is going to last, 8 tracks or cassettes? I voted for 8 tracks. I was obviously wrong, because you have in a physical repository that doesn't last and can't be used again because you don't have the machinery and what have you. But if you have it on a file and it's in the cloud, then I can see that would make more sense and it's going to be preserved. Is there a expansion of what you have in mind? I mean, do you have a team? Like how many people you have involved in this process currently?
Basically, me, myself, and a co-founder, a gentleman named Robbie Harriman, is my CTO. His background's in cybersecurity, which I found very important in what we're doing because there's not a day goes by that I wouldn't want to have the memories of my mother. That was more important to me than realistically anything that she physically left to me.
Hmm.
And so that to me is, your memories for certain people are more valuable than anything. You're secure when you ask us to take care of your digital life for you.
Yeah, so you've got some solid plans and a good foundation in order to build. And this is some of the things that I said, speaking of something physical, I had my parents' first new car. So, I mean, it's something that's very solid. It's a 1957 Buick Special. And believe me, it is
Nice.
solid because it's the kind of thing that it's not going anywhere. As long as you keep it in good shape, it's going to keep on running. you know, I'm very interested in this and the distribution model. I'm sure some other people as well. Could you tell people how they get in touch with you and where can they find you? Because it sounds like a very interesting idea and probably as a growing idea as well.
Well, right now they can get on the site. It's at www.beternal.life,
Okay.
and they can email me at team@beternal.life.
Awesome. So I was really interested in having this idea and what you could share with the audience because I think it's really valuable. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it and all the great things that you've done for America as well. It's much obliged.
Thank you, sir. Thank you
Thank
for the
you, sir.
opportunity.
Thank you for the opportunity to chat with you. Thank you, sir. Until next time, this is a Dr. Digital podcast. If you need something else having to do with digital transformation or anything related to the internet and custom software, just get in touch with me. I certainly can help you out. Until next time, in another episode of the Dr. Digital podcast, we'll see you then. Deus Volt.